In a world where magic exists, there are 4 continents, 20 nations, and many different species. In Hondil, after the Age of Myths and Swords, the current era is known as the Age of Magic, having developed magic extensively. Despite this advanced magical civilization, the political system remains feudal, with kings and nobles, so class divisions still prevail. The current era of magic is also called the Golden Age of Hondil. On December 29, 1999 of the magical century, one day before the new century began, the will of a supreme mage named Manuel Lucas was revealed, turning the world upside down. The old mage announced that he had hidden his power, knowledge, and wealth somewhere in the world, and that anyone who wished could claim his ownerless destiny. Manuel Lucas, the supreme mage who had ushered Hondel into its golden age of magic and who was also an archduke of the Bramp Empire, held the title of the sole Ninth Circle Lord Mage. Upon hearing this message, citizens of all backgrounds set out to find his legacy. Some said Lucas's destiny lay in the Dragon Wastes. Others claimed his treasures were hidden in the allied nation of Elysia, known as a tax haven, and there were even rumors of Manuel Lucas's sky fortress at the center of the world. Regardless of signs, nationality, species, or social status, everyone sought the Archmage's destiny. Yet for 20 years, despite countless expeditions, no one found a single clue, and the mystery endured. One day, a man broke into a sweat when the system before him confirmed that he had acquired Manuel Lucas's destiny, and he was ecstatic at this revelation. It was the magical century year 2007 at Lawrence Castle. The steward, Mordamo, asked young Master Adrian if he intended to resume his studies. Adrian said yes, but Mordamo insisted he didn't have to. The boy replied that he had a book he liked and would go find it later. Adrian Lawrence, the second son of Viscount Lawrence, believes himself to be a reincarnated soul remembering his past life, though nothing especially remarkable happened then. In his final moments, he died in an accident when his military truck overturned, just 1 month before his discharge. Yet when he opened his eyes, he was in the Republic of Korea no more. He had been transported to the Kingdom of Hade, reborn as Adrian Lawrence of a common noble family. Confused at first, Adrian soon realized that his past experiences gave him a great advantage. He loved learning and excelled much earlier than his peers. His instructors praised him as exceptional. He gained recognition from those around him and met his father's expectations all at once. But such success also bred jealousy, and Adrian realized that despite Hondel's advanced civilization far beyond 20th century Earth, his earthly knowledge was of limited use. The only thing he could do was continually improve his own value, so he kept up his genius act. But life isn't easy enough to navigate by effort alone. Adrian remembered the day he was eating with his mother and suddenly fell from his chair. He'd been poisoned. He was only 7, and the doctor said he was lucky. If treatment had been delayed even a little, he would have died. People wondered who was responsible, but Adrian knew the culprit immediately. When he was ill, someone entered his room and asked him anxiously if he realized how worried she was. Frightened, he looked up and saw that woman, Anna Lawrence, his father's legal wife. The high lineage of the Lawrence family made Adrian's humble origin and the fact that he was not the first wife's son uncomfortable for her, especially since he had caught the attention of the family's patriarch. After recovering from the poisoning, Adrian was filled with rage. Despite how advanced this world was, the political system was still extremely backward. Condemning Anna without concrete evidence was impossible. What frustrated him the most was that his father didn't react at all. It was clear Anna was the prime suspect. That's when Adrian understood his father was turning a blind eye and pretending not to know the truth, all in order to preserve the family's reputation. From that moment on, Adrian stopped acting like a genius. About 10 years later, on May 1, 2019, Adrian was now 20 years old. He went to the same cafe he always visited. The staff asked each other if they recognized him and commented that he was the second son of the Lawrence family. Although he didn't look like a noble, he looked like a regular person. One of the staff told them to shut up and asked if she could help him. Adrian asked why he couldn't find any Chronicle Online point cards. The attendant said the store policy had changed and now point cards could only be purchased at the counter. She asked how many he wanted, and he replied, "All of them." After he left, the 2 employees thanked him for the purchase. The supervisor scolded the worker and reminded him that losing the favor of a noble could result in punishment. The male attendant, still puzzled, asked why someone like Adrian would come to the store personally when he could just send a servant. The woman replied that she didn't know either and was also surprised the first time he came in. The man asked how often he visited, and she said 2 or 3 times a month. Judging by that, he must really be a fan of the game. Adrian thought to himself that he had just spent 5 million WS1 on game point cards, about 5 million Korean won. Back at home, one of the guards informed Adrian that they had received a call saying young Master Cedric was visiting the residence, which annoyed Adrian greatly. At home, Adrian's mother, Sylvia Lawrence, asked where he had gone, but before he could answer, someone interrupted, asking if he was wandering the estate on foot and if he'd lost his mind. That person was Cedric Lawrence, Adrian's older half-brother, 23 years old, 3 years older than him. Adrian thought Cedric was incredibly annoying. Cedric started berating him, saying that, as the son of a noble, he should care about the family's reputation and not act like a commoner. But Adrian thought to himself that he didn't care about reputation. Cedric was only respected because of his noble status. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to take care of himself. Adrian stayed quiet, knowing that if he argued back, it would drag on. Instead, he simply said that he had acted carelessly and would be more mindful next time. Cedric, still arrogant, said being a half-blood commoner was nothing to be proud of. Adrian asked what he was doing there. Cedric replied that their father wanted him to take over a business, specifically a Fars distribution enterprise, something Adrian had likely heard about. Adrian thought that noble families in Hondel, by Earth's standards, were a powerful mix of conglomerates and politicians involved in many industries. The Fars distribution business was a key source of income tied to the mining sector, one of the industries managed by the Lawrence family. He understood now why Cedric had suddenly appeared. Adrian said he understood, but he would refuse the offer. Cedric, mocking him, said that Adrian understood quickly. Adrian then told him that if his business was done, he could leave now, because he had just spent a lot of money on his games. Cedric was shocked, laughed, and told him that it was better for someone like him to be a nobody. Adrian's mother, worried, asked if he would be okay. He said yes, staying out of family matters was safer. He thought back to how, ever since the poisoning incident, he had abandoned his genius image and isolated himself, minimizing contact even with his vassals. Maybe it was because his father had no interest in a concubine son who no longer acted like a prodigy. Thanks to this attitude, Adrian hadn't faced any more life-threatening situations. For 10 years he had lived in the shadows, keeping a low profile. People in the mansion called him a game addict. There were even rumors that he had once been a genius, but now spent all his time gaming. Most of the servants under his authority were under the influence of the official wife, Anna, allowing her to speak freely in the household. Back in his room, Adrian picked up a VR headset. As he put it on, he thought to himself that everyone believed he was using games to escape reality, but they were completely wrong. Once inside the game, he completed Phase 1 of the Destiny mission and began syncing his character with his real-world body. Adrian thought that if someone wanted to monitor him, they'd have to do it in the virtual world too, because Chronicle Online's abilities reflected directly into reality. He remembered that 10 years ago, while attending the Royal Academy, he had researched Manuel Lucas for a class assignment. That's when he stumbled upon something unexpected, a clue related to Lucas's family that, no matter how he looked at it, strongly resembled a certain word, Brazil. The word was Y, which made Adrian wonder how English could exist in this world. That led him to speculate that maybe Manuel Lucas was also from Earth. However, he told himself he couldn't jump to conclusions based on that alone. It could just be a coincidence. But it didn't take long for him to confirm that Archaic Lucas was in fact from Earth. Adrian discovered that shortly before his death, Lucas had uttered a few final words expressing a wish to walk the beaches of California with Mary one more time. Although Adrian wasn't familiar with those place names, he had never heard of them before. This was the story of a great man and couldn't be ignored. The names written in the records by the butler who stayed with Lucas until his final moments confirmed Adrian's suspicion. This was no mere coincidence. The great Archduke of Hondel was an Earthling, just like Adrian. There was solid evidence proving his earthly origin. Lucas named his inventions using Earth-related names. For instance, he named an aura condensation device Washington, and called the first virtual reality device Hollywood. So Adrian used the knowledge from his past life on Earth to search for the destiny Lucas had left behind. He spent years searching and, in the end, finally found Manuel Lucas's destiny. Excited, Adrian exclaimed that he had finally done it. Now from this point on, he could walk a path of flowers. But to his surprise, obtaining that destiny was far from easy. He had to fight numerous monsters, and since the virtual reality world was linked to his physical body, he felt real pain. He realized that after obtaining Lucas's destiny, his true suffering had only just begun. He wondered whether he could truly fight without fear, since the destiny of Archduke Lucas had been hidden in an unexpected location within the online world. In other words, within the virtual world Adrian called his own. Even though the virtual world was created to be as detailed as reality, a game was still a game. Usually he couldn't fully feel it because it was filtered, but in his case he felt real pain and struggled every time he fought. This was a seemingly impossible story to acquire Manuel Lucas's destiny. He had to synchronize the game with real life. Who would ever believe him if he told them that? At that moment, a goblin appeared and attacked him. Adrian managed to dodge, counterattacked, and defeated it. That was how he reached level 10. Now he could change his class and had officially completed the first stage of the Destiny quest. He was then transported to a secret space by the main god Ariel. After receiving several notifications, Adrian thought to himself that he had finally reached level 10 and completed stage 1. Basically, the abilities from Chronicle Online were now reflecting into real life. Everything he earned in the game would transfer to reality. Suddenly, a door appeared behind him, and a prompt asked if he wanted to go to the second floor of Manuel Lucas's magic tower. Adrian replied, "Of course," and opened the door. Inside was a gigantic library, very different from the empty first floor. There were many bookshelves filled with books. In the corner, he saw a treasure chest. When he opened it, he received 5 billion lote and was prompted to input his account number to receive the deposit. Adrian thought that finally, a prize that felt like a real reward had appeared, but even though he couldn't claim all that money in reality, the true value of the destiny wasn't the wealth, it was the magic circle he obtained. He had now changed his class to a mage, and the magic circle had perfectly bound to his real body. The system warned him not to log out, as his synchronized body could suffer serious damage if disconnected by force. He realized that up until now he thought the MP bar shown alongside HP was just mana, but he had never actually felt mana in real life. Now, with the creation of the magic circle, he could clearly feel the presence of mana in his chest. It hadn't been an easy process. This, he realized, was the true power of destiny, the synchronization between the game and the real world. Now that he had formed the first circle, he wondered if he could learn a technique that complemented it. When he reached for a book, a window appeared asking if he wanted to view the materials. Adrian thought it was very convenient, not needing to flip through all the books manually. It was just what you'd expect from the greatest mage in the world, Manuel Lucas. After a while, however, he began suffering from a splitting headache. While learning skills in magic just by touching books was convenient in games, the process of embedding those principles into his mind was extremely painful and uncomfortable. At last, he reached the final book, the Magic Circle Concealment Manual, which allowed him to hide the mana circle he now possessed. Adrian thought this skill was exactly what he needed most right now, and it was as if Manuel Lucas had known his situation. He acquired the skill but collapsed to the ground from the pain. He thought that honestly he hadn't had high expectations when it came to the destiny of Manuel Lucas. All he really wanted was to live a peaceful life with his mother, free of complications, and he would do whatever it took to achieve that. The next day, during a training session on the mansion grounds, a knight commented, "He's got more stamina than usual." Adrian asked, "You really think so?" The knight named Vice said that honestly he was surprised when Adrian said he wanted to train in swordsmanship. Adrian replied that his body had been feeling heavier lately and thought to himself truthfully, he thought that training his body in real life might help him in the game. But setting that aside, he could now feel the mana circle and his stamina improving. It seemed that improvements in his in-game stats were also having an effect in the real world. In other words, the skills he could use in the game were also usable in real life, which was insanely overpowered. Fortunately, he was able to solve the problem of hiding his mana circle from knights sensitive to mana using the mana circle concealment ability. A knight then asked him if something good had happened. Adrian replied that he had gotten a good item in the game. The others training nearby commented, saying, as expected from a gaming addict, and Vice is a freak for helping a weakling like him. Vice got angry and told them they were being too rude. Adrian simply asked him not to worry about it and thought to himself how grateful he was that Vice got mad on his behalf. But in truth, it was all an act. He needed to avoid the pathetic looks from Anna and Cedric. Being ignored as a useless bastard was actually the best-case scenario for him now. Once again, he returned to his room and logged into the game. Now that he had confirmed his real-world stats were linked with his in-game ones, what he needed most was to create a guild. That way, he could gain more money and more skills in the future. He remembered someone once told him that the most important power in this game was the power of your wallet. So he began purchasing various items, potions, stat boosts, blessings of the goddess protection, increased XP, and many other buffs. Then a new window popped up, saying he could now summon a supporter. He wondered, what do they mean by supporter, and guessed that it must be due to his low stamina. Having a support character would help him grow. To summon a supporter, he needed to use XP points, the same ones required for leveling up. But since he planned to play in a team, it wasn't a waste. He decided to select a high-tier warrior as his tank. He didn't care about the cost. When he clicked to summon, several supporter characters appeared. He thought it was very similar to the strange Korean games he had seen. He spent 30 million WS but didn't find any character he liked. Then he was surprised to see one of the supporters, Archia, the Steel Celestial. She was a defense-specialized support character with a protective shield ability called God's Shield. He wondered if this was the first time he'd seen a support like that. Maybe she was an undiscovered character. Her class was Unique Angel, and she had excellent skills. He was then asked whether he would like to register Archia, the Steel Celestial, as his supporter. He said yes. Emma explained to him that once the character was registered, no changes could be made, and asked him to confirm again. He confirmed and registered Archia. A grand visual effect displayed her character, and she appeared right before his eyes, a tanker with a massive shield named Archia, the Steel Celestial. Adrian commented that her facial expression looked like that of a golem in a human body. He then headed straight to the battlefield with Archia and tested her skills. She was incredibly effective at defense, while he just kept casting the magic missile spell. In that short period of fighting alongside her, he reached level 20. The hunt was going far more smoothly than he had expected. Even though some of his XP was being transferred to her, he didn't feel any major difference. Then, a new window appeared, notifying him that he had been playing the game for 15 hours straight. The system asked him to please log out and rest. So he logged out, returned to his room, and said that today had been really good. He decided to take a nap, and once he woke up, planned to go to the training room. But to his surprise, he sensed someone standing right behind him. When he turned around, he saw Areus, the Steel Celestial, had transferred into the real world. Startled, he asked, "What the hell are you doing here?" She replied, "I am my master's support." But he said that wasn't what he meant. What he really wanted to know was how she had left the game. She said, "Ah, I understand now. You must be curious about how I can maintain my presence in reality." He answered, "Yes," and thought to himself that, judging by how she could distinguish between the game and the real world, she clearly understood his situation. She then explained that she was a homunculus, essentially an android, and her creator was Sir Manuel Lucas. Her appearance and combat characteristics were predetermined by her master based on the concept of the Steel Celestial. Adrian thought to himself, so in other words, she's one of Sir Lucas's legacies. She confirmed that. He cursed in his head, thinking, "Damn it! If I had known this would happen, I would have chosen a better support, someone more versatile than her." He asked if her stats were the same as in the game. To his surprise, she replied, "Yes. The restricted stats will recover once I meet the quest level requirements. At the moment, I believe my stats are equivalent to those of a Grandmaster." That left Adrian stunned. A Grandmaster was on par with an 8th Circle Mage, the strongest tier on the continent. Even in the Hayward Kingdom, the highest recognized rank for mages was the 7th Circle. There were only 8 8th Circle mages in the entire world. He asked himself, how did Manuel Lucas create a monster like this? Still, it was reassuring to have a trustworthy companion who obeyed only his commands. Now the problem was how to hide this girl. He asked her where she had been before she showed up there, and whether it was possible to take her back into the game. She answered that she had been in a suspended state. She explained that she had been waiting in a maintenance warehouse in Evero, a holy city. She had been transmitted through the game's management server, and such transmissions were only possible during the initial dispatch. After that, if she wanted to return to the maintenance warehouse, she would have to go back on her own. Adrian asked if she had any stealth or magical concealment abilities. She replied that, being a warrior class, she didn't have any stealth skills, but she could use mana concealment. He asked her to show him. When she activated her mana concealment ability, the protective shield embedded in her armor disappeared along with her mana signature. Fortunately, just like him, she had the ability to conceal her mana, so she wouldn't be detected by the knights. That was exactly what he needed. He commented that it seemed he had no other option, and since his reputation was already one of the worst, he didn't care anymore. The next day, he casually walked around the mansion with her as if nothing was unusual. The servants whispered that Master Adrian was openly bringing a woman into the mansion. Some of the maids even claimed they had seen her and Master Adrian in his room, and they all wondered who that girl could be. When he went to speak with his mother, she was overjoyed and asked when he was going to marry, saying that the girl was very lovely. Embarrassed, he ran off and returned to his room to continue doing missions. Eventually, he reached level 30. Looking at his status window, he thought that pretending to be a young, mature master who brought an exotic guest into the mansion was the best way to keep people from suspecting Arcia's true nature. He then asked her what happened to her real-world body when she was connected to the game. She said it switched to energy-saving mode, meaning it was essentially resting. However, the monitoring function would remain active for her master's protection. He asked if that meant she could alert or respond to him immediately if something happened outside. She confirmed, saying exactly. Before they could think any further, the next phase of their quest began. They had to fight an orc warrior named Kant. Adrian received the mission notification, Fate Mission Stage 2, Defeat the Orc Warrior Kant. The huge orc told Adrian that he could become someone special if he managed to kill him here. A warning window appeared stating that consumable items such as bombs and scrolls were prohibited during this battle. Adrian thought, so items that make hunting easier are banned. Looks like Manuel Lucas wants his disciple to grow stronger through raw skill alone. He called Arcia and told her they were going to take down this orc. When the orc charged to attack, Arcia raised her shield and blocked the massive blow. The monster seemed confused. While the orc was distracted, Adrian activated magic missile and launched it straight into the orc's eyes, scoring a critical hit. He thought to himself that thanks to his improved physical condition and high-quality equipment, the power of his magic missile surpassed that of a basic first circle spell. If this orc was a monster of the same level, it should be easy to defeat him. But to his surprise, the orc drew a sword and tried to finish him off. Archie managed to defend in time. Adrian shouted, "This is crazy." The orc, even blinded, kept charging at him without hesitation. He realized that the orc's HP bar hadn't even dropped to half yet. The orc began unleashing a flurry of blows at the two of them. Adrian thought he would die if even one of those hits landed. He was grateful that Arcia was by his side. He admitted to himself that he would be lying if he said he didn't get nervous seeing such a powerful enemy coming straight at him. He had already died once, so he wasn't taking any chances. He activated Earth Shatter and a hole opened beneath the orc, causing him to fall into it. After knocking the orc down, Adrian reminded himself that at this level, he couldn't let fear get in the way. He had to clear this stage. He told Arcia to let the orc stand again and then continued to launch attacks from various angles. After a long and intense battle, the orc warrior Kant finally dropped to 50% HP. Adrian muttered, "This guy is seriously persistent. It would have been better to drop the sword and use some floor techniques." As the orc charged at him once again, Adrian activated another magic missile and finally defeated the orc warrior, completing stage 2 of the Fate mission. A notification appeared, conditions met to unlock the next area of the magic tower. The third floor of Manuel Lucas's tower has been opened. That night, in the office of Viscount Lawrence, the viscount stood by the window, deep in thought. Someone entered the room and asked what he was thinking about, calling him darling. It was Adrian's father, Highford Lawrence, and the woman was his wife, Anna Lawrence, his first wife. She asked why he was alone at that hour of the night. She wondered if it had something to do with the rumors that Adrian had brought a commoner woman into the mansion. Viscount Lawrence handed her a letter. Upon reading it, she realized it was a military summons. Tensions with the Crocan Empire had escalated, and there was now a strong possibility of war. Each territory had been instructed to gather their local forces. Viscount Lawrence had been ordered to join the Western Command with 5 vanguards, 50 knights, and 1,000 soldiers. Anna was shocked. She asked if he was considering sending Cedric, but she then pleaded, "Please send Adrian instead. He just plays games all day and does nothing else. As a member of the Lawrence family, shouldn't he start doing his part?" Then, his father asked if, after leaving Adrian alone all this time, she now wanted him to suddenly become important. She replied that it was he who made that choice and that, until now, Adrian had been enjoying the privileges of nobility to the fullest. His father asked if she truly believed that. She questioned what he meant by that, but he simply stared at her in silence. Then he said that Cedric was the heir to the territory and that he would ensure she and her stepfather would no longer be troubled by anything going forward. She should just follow his decisions now, something that greatly surprised her. He told her that, as she herself had suggested earlier, he would send Adrian to the battlefield this time. However, once Adrian returned, he would make him completely independent. He also hoped that neither Adrian nor Sylvia would be in danger in the future. This would include surveillance and secret investigations. He asked her if that would be enough for her and then told her to stop interfering to let Adrian be free. The next morning, Adrian was training with a knight. The man remarked that Adrian's physical strength had improved drastically, thanks to their daily training. He said he could hardly believe such quick progress. If he had worked this hard in his own youth, he might have become a great man. But Adrian knew that his improvement came mostly from reaching level 30 and clearing the second stage of the Fate mission. The reward from the mission had been excellent, and most importantly, he had received a large sum of money and successfully formed his second magical circle. It was like having an inventory system in a game, his own treasure chest to hide items whenever necessary. If used well, it could serve more than just storage purposes. In fact, the game's stats had real-world effects. With enough effort, he could become a magician with the physical abilities of a knight. If he could fully absorb the stats granted by fate, he could become a monster far more terrifying than Archmage Lucas. Just then the butler arrived and called out to Adrian, informing him that his lordship had summoned him to the castle. Adrian was surprised and wondered why they were calling him now. Some time passed, and Adrian was now in the Lawrence castle, standing in the office of the family patriarch. He wondered why he had been summoned, but before anything could be said, his older brother Cedric began shouting at their father, demanding to know why that guy was being sent to represent the family on the battlefield. Their father explained that Cedric was the family's sole heir and he could not allow him to go to such a dangerous place. Adrian's mother then asked the father if he was saying that Adrian was less precious than the other son. Was the patriarch admitting there was a difference in value between them? Adrian realized he had been summoned just to hear this, which made him incredibly angry. Still, it wasn't entirely bad for him. He thought that anyone could enter the game as long as they had a headset, and since he was merely a stand-in for the heir, no one would dare mess with him. The most important thing now was to leave as quickly as possible to escape Anna's constant surveillance. He said he understood and that he would represent the family in battle. His father thanked him. Cedric, however, said he wouldn't say anything further since it was their father's decision, but warned that he wouldn't remain silent if Adrian brought shame to the family. Adrian found that amusing, his older brother who was staying home to rest warning him, the younger sibling who was heading off to battle. He thought Cedric had been coddled far too much as a child. Adrian said he would do his best, but before he left, the patriarch asked to speak with him privately. Adrian noted how the man asked the guards to leave and wondered what he wanted to say to him alone. His father began by saying that, if this operation went well, he would relocate Adrian and Sylvia to the royal capital. Adrian should consider it a reward for going in Cedric's place. There, he would be able to live freely, without interference from anyone. Adrian thought to himself that even when he was far from Anna's sight, she still hated him. He asked if his father had truly allowed this, yet, deep down, he still didn't fully trust the man. Still, he said he understood and would think about it. His father asked if he didn't trust him, and Adrian replied that it wasn't about trust. It was more like he needed to survive the battlefield first before he could truly consider the offer. His father agreed and handed him something. When Adrian took it, his father explained it was a Class 5 artifact with an S-class shield, extremely useful in battle, especially since teleportation was not allowed there. Adrian knew that artifacts like this were incredibly valuable, so he thanked his father. The man told him he would need to stay sharp if he wanted to survive. As Adrian turned around, he noticed Cedric and Anna glaring at him with threatening auras. Of course, he thought, they would be watching. The patriarch told him not to worry about Sylvia and to relax when he was out there. Adrian thought back to when someone had tried to poison him at the age of 7. His father's reaction had been deeply disappointing, and he had let Adrian down many times. Still, surrounded by enemies, the only person Adrian could rely on now was his own father. So he said that he would trust him, but only this one time. Later, back in his office, the patriarch was nursing a bad headache. He activated a ring that eased his pain and thought about Adrian. He had known ever since the poisoning incident that Adrian was only pretending to be stupid. Meanwhile, at Adrian's mansion, he asked his mother not to worry so much, reminding her that he could take care of himself. She replied that if they hurt him after sending him to the battlefield, she didn't know what she would do. Adrian said that it would actually be good for him. The more crimes they committed, the easier it would be to eliminate all of them. This shocked his mother, and she asked what he meant by that and how he could speak that way. If anyone overheard them, they'd be punished. But Adrian replied that Arcia was standing guard outside the door. He says that he's not just getting beaten up like before since it's almost over. He asks her to please wait just a little longer, because when he comes back, everything will definitely change. Now, 2 days later, in the military convoy of Lin's, the butler Hamin asks who that young lady is. Ed asks him if he doesn't recognize Arcia, and the butler says he's heard about their relationship, but he's heading to the battlefield and isn't so sure about bringing a lover along. Inside the conference room on the levitation train, Adrian says they'll still need to discuss Arcia. He thinks that he can't leave her behind because she will save him if things go wrong, especially now that she has recently leveled up significantly and her attributes are close to those of an official knight. He still needs to improve his survival tactics. He spent 200 million in just 2 days of gaming and completed the 3rd level of the Luck Encounter quest with money. Now, he is about to reach the 4th stage. The rewards for the 3rd level each cost 100 billion. He obtained an omnipotent healing potion and 3 vials of elixir, which are now stored in his pocket dimension. He thinks it's the perfect reward for this situation, and he can't waste any more time there. He gets up and says he will rest in his room. He asks them to send a message when something happens. The others wonder what he's going to do, and he bluntly says he's going to play a bit, asking if that's a problem, which surprises everyone. One of them says that the rumors were true, which leaves her somewhat surprised, thinking that guy is a vanguard. He recalls that vanguards are a special force equipped with power armor and power swords. They are the centerpiece of war and are a key factor in evaluating a nation's military strength. That man asks Adrian if he's sure about what he's doing, warning that he'll be seen as an incompetent commander if he continues, especially since his reputation isn't great. He even brought a girl to war and now says he's just going to play games. He understands bringing the girl since she's quite beautiful, but someone interrupts and addresses him as Mr. Dalton, telling him to be careful with his words, which scares Dalton. This man then turns to Adrian and says that his subordinate has crossed the line and apologizes. He is another vanguard, the vice leader of the Knights, Bilon. He says that a long journey like this is meant to pass the time. Adrian thinks that his expression doesn't seem like someone who truly wishes to apologize. The guy says there's no reason to care about the opinion of a mere subordinate. Adrian turns his back and just asks to be notified when they arrive. Back in his room, he finally enters the game world and is already fighting a giant lizard. He uses a potion to activate the salamander's tears attack. He says it's really expensive, but 3,000 true damage without configuration is worth it. He accepts that without hesitation. He then receives a notification that he has reached level 80 and that the main god Ariel will now take him to the secret room. Upon arrival, he realizes that this is the mission for the 4th level Demleet. The Demleet, in Earsey, has 32,000 HP and is a monstrous elite. He welcomes Adrian as his prey. Adrian thinks that he must complete the 4th level before they reach the western headquarters, in order to unlock the 5th floor of the Tower of Manuel Lucas. He reads the monster's name and realizes it is the Demleet. Class monsters are hard to kill, but this one seems dumb and slow. However, the monster activates the stone curse and then ice spears. The spell passes through Arcia and heads straight for Adrian. He realizes the monster used magic before they even took their positions, and that the arena won't be able to help him here, so he has to dodge. But before he can, he is hit and starts screaming in pain. The elite starts laughing, saying he can hear Adrian's bones being crushed and his flesh being ripped apart. Adrian thinks this is a nightmare and regrets not dodging. He can't think straight from the pain. The monster's laughter is also incredibly annoying. It reminds him his older brother's laugh. As Adrian tries to get up, the leader tells him to stay down and activates a fireball, but both Adrian and Asia dodge it and charge at him. To the elite's surprise, Adrian uses a healing ability and tells Asia not to let him cast another spell. He thinks the best way to fight elite without a priest is to use equipment with holy attributes. The lit starts screaming as Adrian confirms that holy attributes are the best strategy to beat him up. The elite asks how he's dealing so much damage with just one wand. Then the lit activates a wall of fire and a massive wall appears in front of him. But to his shock, Adrian passes right through it, and with his wand of holy power strikes him in the face, telling him to die, calling him a filthy monster who looks too much like Cedric. After finally defeating the lit, Adrian completes the 4th level of the luck encounter mission. He starts screaming in pain again. Adrian remembers that during a fight, adrenaline keeps you from feeling pain, but once it wears off, the pain is unbearable. Asia quickly pulls a potion from her inventory and heals him. Adrian is surprised. A servant accessing their master's inventory on their own shows how truly special she is. He thanks her and says he feels better now. The system then announces that the requirements to unlock the next floor of the tower have been met, and the 5th floor is now unlocked. At the Tower of Manuel Lucas, upon arrival, there's another treasure chest. He wants to see what kind of reward he has just received. When he opens it, he finds 500 billion lots, which are immediately sent to his account. He also receives a pair of round glasses. He wonders what kind of glasses they are. They can't be ordinary since they're a gift from Archimage Lucas. He opens the detailed description and sees that these glasses have analysis, observation, clairvoyance, and night vision. They are capable of analyzing the usage, purpose, and status of a living being or object, can see through obstacles, and can see things up to 100 meters away. He's quite surprised to see that this is a very useful item, one that no one would suspect he's carrying. With the mission now complete, the 4th circle is generated. They finally arrive at the Western headquarters, and people around them realize that the 2nd son of the Lawrence family has finally arrived. They had assumed that the older son would be chosen by the Lawrence family. He thinks his name was Cedric or something like that, since he had caught everyone's attention early on due to his talent. So perhaps the one chosen now is the younger son, not Cedric. He heard that Cedric turned into an idiot after ingesting poison. The protagonist confirms that it's true. He's the little boy who was poisoned. The two men say they can't see him as an idiot and that the rumors must be false. They both say it's a pleasure to meet him. The man on the left is Viscount Evans, the head of the local team of this headquarters, and the other is Viscount Miller, the assistant to the team leader. Adrian bows and says it's an honor to meet them both. The leader then asks if his troops consist of 5 vanguards and 50 knights. Adrian confirms and adds that he also has 1,000 soldiers. But the man says he doesn't need to mention the soldiers because this war will be decided by the vanguards alone. The protagonist thinks to himself that they are treating the armed elite like mere tools. Vanguards are monsters that only great sorcerers of the 7th circle or higher can control. Unfortunately, what he says is true, and the protagonist believes that it was Archduke Lucas who created the vanguard system. The assistant then says that the Lawrence army has been organized as the 2nd Independent Brigade under the command of the 3rd Division. Adrian must not forget to meet the division commander, Count Otis, to receive a report. The protagonist thinks he already knows about Count Otis and replies that he understands. After the assistant leaves, Adrian reflects that his army has been organized as a 2nd Independent Brigade, and then he calls everyone to move on. A week passes and he thinks that the best kind of superior is an absent one. When he tried to meet the commander, his assistant said that the commander was traveling from place to place using teleportation, so he couldn't meet him. Adrian thinks that his actions are absurd, but it's great for him, because it means he can play freely without worrying. Just then, Asia calls out to him and says someone has entered his room, which surprises him greatly. He exits the game and sees that it's Mr. Dalton asks what kind of power that girl has. Adrian doesn't understand why he came, but then uses his glasses and sees that Dalton's status is marked as excited. Adrian steps closer and tells him to explain why he is there. Dalton says he was concerned for Adrian's health since he had been playing for a long time, but the girl blocked his way. To Dalton's surprise, Adrian kicks him and asks why he did it. Adrian says he told them to send a message if anything happened and that Arcia is always by his side protecting him. Adrian demands a better explanation for why he entered the commander's room without permission, and whether his intent was to kill him. Dalton is shocked and says this is going too far. He asks Adrian if he knows who he is. He's a vanguard. How could he do something like that? Adrian kicks him again and then asks Arcia to explain what happened. She says he tried to separate her from Adrian. Adrian asks if she means he tried to take her somewhere, and she says yes. Dalton argues that she is falsely accusing him and asks Adrian if he's really going to believe some random girl over a vanguard. Adrian thinks that this guy is trash and that those knights must have followed him to see what would happen. He says this is a violation of military discipline. In fact, it amounts to mutiny, and that Dalton will be punished accordingly. Adrian then points a dagger at him and tells him to step forward. Dalton, furious, asks if he's serious, and the others in the background beg him to calm down. Adrian thinks that he's not doing this to seem like a good person. He's doing it because he wants to survive. This is a place where Anna can't monitor him, which means he has no reason to hold back. So he stares Dalton down and dares him to come at him. Meanwhile, in Vice Leader Bellon's tent, someone arrives saying that the brigade commander has issued an execution order for Mr. Dalton, and they need to go immediately. Dalton thinks he never expected this from Adrian. They've got a reckless commander now, and he can't just invent an execution order for a vanguard at a time like this. But to his surprise, a dagger suddenly appears right in front of his eyes. He barely manages to grab it and notices it has blood on it. Adrian asks why he didn't react faster. One more second, and he would have been killed. Dalton is now on the ground in immense pain. One of the others asks for context, and Adrian says as far as he knows, it goes against knightly morals to harass a woman. He asks the vice leader what he thinks, and the vice leader, clearly furious, demands to know what they've done. He then bows and admits that this happened because of his lack of tact, asking for forgiveness. While stepping on Dawson, he declares that Mr. Dawson is suspended from his position. He orders them to confiscate his armor and imprison him. Additionally, the three others involved will also spend some time in prison for insubordination and complicity. Adrian then says that he is the one in command here and that he's not playing babysitter. The vice leader simply lowers his head. Adrian continues, stating that this is not the county and the fourth ring is made of blood. He orders someone to clean the mess while he goes to rest in the adjacent room. The vice leader comments that Adrian has finally dropped his mask. He smiles slightly, thinking that something interesting has finally happened around here. Once again, the boy locks himself in his room and resumes the game, fighting alongside Arcia against more monsters. During the battle, he thinks about how he keeps targeting their weak points, yet they still manage to keep their distance. This is the knight fallen from Zenith, basically the boss of the 5th level. Charging toward them, he yells for them to die. Just as he is about to strike Adrian's neck, Adrian dodges. To the knight's surprise, Arcia slams her shield right into his face. At that moment, the boy activates his magic, and strangely the knight smiles. He says that he is merely a stepping stone for Adrian's growth. With that, they defeat yet another enemy, and the 6th floor of the Tower of Magus Lucas is unlocked. Upon reaching it, Adrian receives 2 trillion lots. He is becoming wealthier by the day. A new bank account is created for him in the Union Bank of Elysia. Adrian reflects that although it's an exaggeration, it's still very gratifying to see. However, he is surprised by 2 new notifications. He sees that he has received several new items: the Scepter of Istro, the Cloak of Istro, the Armor of Istro, the Shield of Istro, the Short Sword of Istro, the Sword of Istro, and various other Istro equipment. Arcia notes that the Cloak and Scepter are unique items that only he can use. The rest, he decides, will go to Arcia. These are all incredible pieces of equipment, which is expected, considering they were crafted by Archduke Lucas. At that moment, he's informed of an intruder. He returns to reality as someone enters his room and apologizes for the intrusion. Adrian asks what's going on. The soldier explains that he sensed a powerful aura. The protagonist replies that he was just inspecting some artifacts and asks the man not to worry about it. The soldier apologizes again and leaves. Adrian then talks about Mage Lucas, and as he suspected, confirms that this sword is the kind of weapon an elite vanguard would use. The sword is made of mithril and dragon bone. He says that anyone could match a vanguard soldier while wielding this sword, even if just for 15 seconds. Normally, equipment given to vanguard members is enhanced because, unlike mana, ore cannot be created and is hard to store. He wonders whether these mage items also have that effect. He takes out the scepter and cloak of Istro and discovers that their special ability is storing aura. Surprised, he finally understands why everyone desires Manuel Lucas's legacy. 2 weeks pass since he was appointed as the family's representative to lead the army at the front against the Season Empire. The atmosphere has been tense with the looming threat of war. At any moment, countless people may give their lives for their country. As he walks around, he notes that ever since the Dalton incident, everyone has been avoiding him and treating him with great respect. But something is peculiar about how Bellon treats him. He always looks at Adrian in a friendly way. Adrian notices that Bellon's status shows curious and cautious, but he doesn't want to deal with that now. Since everyone fears him, he can finally play in peace. Looking to the side, he sees Arcia. Her status says happy, and he wonders if it's because they came out for a walk. He questions if he's like some kind of puppy to her. On the outside, it's hard to tell if a homunculus has emotions. He knows almost nothing about her. She barely has a personality. He doesn't know what she likes or dislikes, but almost is the key word. Even if she doesn't express it, he can tell. As he looks at her closely, her status changes to very happy. Later, when they return to the mansion, he tells her he's going out for a bit. She says she understands, but to his surprise, a soldier is staring at him. Adrian asks what the problem is. The soldier asks if they can have a drink together, if he doesn't mind, which surprises Adrian even more. He sees the soldier's status embarrassed and uncomfortable, and he thinks he understands what's going on. Wider asks if it was those guys who sent him to do this. Adrian thinks the soldier must have a reason, but he's not interested at all. He says that if the man has nothing more to say, he's leaving now. But as he's walking away, Adrian stops and asks why he decided to become a knight, surprising the soldier. The man apologizes profusely and promises it won't happen again. He begs not to be sent to prison. Adrian activates his glasses and checks the soldier's status. He sees that the man has an extremely high talent for mana, excellent learning ability, high intelligence, and is gifted in arithmetic. Adrian realizes this is the first time someone other than a homunculus has shown more than 2 talents. He was a rare talent for a mage. Adrian understood why that guy was being mocked by the other knights, but it wasn't his problem. He told him to forgive the others and said it would be much better if he became a mage instead. This surprised the guy a lot. Back in his room, Adrian thought it was a waste and he didn't want to get involved because he didn't want any trouble. But Lopez was practically unique. Even if he couldn't be the best at physical combat, if he combined magic with vanguard equipment, he'd become an excellent spellblade. Of course, talent doesn't guarantee success for anyone, but Lopez had been a knight since he was a child, so his chances were good. If Adrian could train him and place him under his command, it would be excellent. The problem, however, was the Count. Alan was a knight from a different county, so Adrian would first have to convince Watts. He thought maybe a little bribery might help. But the truth was, he didn't even know the full extent of Lopez's talents yet. Maybe he was just slightly above average. Still, Adrian needed to start building his own influence, and now he was freer than ever. So he decided that from now on, they'd be busy searching for more and more talented individuals. As that guy walked away, he thought about Adrian's words about commander of the 2nd Brigade, Adrian Lawrence. At first he thought Adrian was just another spoiled noble kid, but when Adrian said he should become a mage, that caught him off guard because he had thought the same thing before. He went to see the commander after being summoned. He thought to himself that rumors aren't always right. Adrian was nothing like the rumors, and that was kind of scary. When he opened the door, he asked if the commander wanted to speak with him, but to his surprise, the one sitting beside Count Watts was none other than Adrian Lawrence. He didn't understand why his lord had called him there. Watts then told him that he probably already knew, but Adrian Lawrence was the representative of the Count from the Lawrence family. From now on, Mr. Lopez was to serve under Mr. Lawrence as his lord, which left Lopez completely stunned. Adrian thought back to something from his past life. When China lost to Korea in a football championship, someone asked, how can a country with 1.4 billion people not find 11 good players? Someone replied, because the Chinese Messi or Ronaldo is probably out there farming somewhere. Adrian realized that's exactly how it is. No matter how much potential someone has, it doesn't matter if there isn't a system that helps them bring that potential to life. He asked Archia, who would have thought that in this place so many people would be walking the wrong path. A few days later, Adrian recruited several people: Alan Lopes, a third-class knight from Count Watts; Ederson, a peasant, laborer, and one of the only soldiers capable of playing an instrument, who became a trumpeter; Eric Jones, a bold young man caught trying to sell pornography in the army; Nicholas Brown, and a maid from a neighboring army, Linda Noah. Adrian believed each of them was exceptional, they just never had the chance to show it due to their respective circumstances. Linda Noah approached him and asked why she was there. She said the test had confirmed she couldn't be a mage. Adrian simply replied that the test was wrong. That's all there was to it. Nervously, she said she understood. When Adrian checked her stats, he saw her mana was very high, as were her learning and intelligence. He thought to himself that it had better be worth the $500,000 he spent to bring her there. None of them really understood yet why they were there, but the peasant told the others not to question it, to just trust Mr. Lawrence. When Adrian checked the stats of that peasant, he saw that his physical strength and aura were both high. He had come with Nicholas, who also had a great talent for aura, though he was still a minor. Adrian told them to hurry up and get changed. The front lines were about 100 kilometers away, but they didn't need to worry. Then, Adrian took all of them to one of the most expensive shops in the city. He could tell that most of them felt awkward and out of place, probably because they had never been in a place like that before. Someone walked in and pointed to an outfit, saying they'd take it. Adrian said it was a good choice. Eric Jones thanked him and called him commander. When Adrian checked Eric's stats, he saw that his political negotiation was very high, his administrative capacity was high, and his trait was silver tongue. Adrian thought that while the others were good frontline fighters, Eric was a fighter in politics. His talent was truly impressive. Adrian told them not to worry about the price. They should take whatever they wanted and always aim for the best. He thought to himself that talent means nothing if you don't train it. From now on, they'd start training outside the base, and they'd also be educated. They'd be dressed properly to fit the environment. After everyone received new clothes, they asked Adrian if they'd be living in that giant mansion. Adrian replied that yes, they'd spend most of their time there. The staff had already been assigned. He told them not to worry about daily chores, just to focus on their studies. He'd be paying their monthly salary, and on top of that, they'd receive $20 million monthly and a $240 million annual bonus. But they must not forget the rules of their contract. They were very happy with the money and said they would do their best. Adrian told them that if they proved his intuition was correct, there would be much more money where that came from. However, that kind of result doesn't happen overnight, so they had to give it their all. He added finally that he hoped they wouldn't disappoint him. He hated having to give lectures. They all responded with a firm yes, Commander Adrian. The protagonist thought to himself that these were the best talents he had found. From now on, they would be his personally selected elite. This wasn't a short-term investment, but one day they would thrive. It was a major investment in a bright future. As he walked through the city, he thought that when he returned, he would have to be careful when confronting Cedric, even with Anna at his side. He also needed to consider his mother. But then, to both their surprise, he suddenly felt something at his back, and Archia quickly grabbed the man by the neck. Adrian calmly greeted the man with a good morning, thinking that he had been getting more and more worried about their safety. He had already spotted several spies lurking around daily. He approached the man, and before the man could say anything, Adrian cut him off, saying he wasn't interested in hearing his words. He asked if the man's brother truly didn't know when to give up. For a rat like him, there was only one way to become useful. Adrian said that stupidity was a dangerous flaw in a spy. He asked how much the man valued his life before throwing him to the ground and telling him to follow orders, and everything would be fine in the end. The spy trembled in fear, sensing Archia's aura. He realized she was an aura specialist, not an ordinary woman. The man claimed he didn't know anything, but after Adrian threatened him, he revealed everything. Adrian asked if he had followed them there since the teleport, with the help of an inside agent. The blonde spy, very nervous, wondered how Adrian knew that. To his surprise, Adrian told him that he already knew everything about him in advance. He had always been one step ahead, not only of him but also of the other spy. Maybe this man could help him stay even further ahead. Adrian was certain that he was only following Cedric's orders, and he felt the man was reluctant to spy on him. The man looked at Archia, visibly nervous. He asked Adrian if he was really planning to go against Master Cedric. Adrian gave him a sly smile, and the man said he couldn't do that. But at that moment, Adrian pointed a dagger at him and told him to save his words. If he feared death, then he must obey Adrian. If he wanted to live, the man responded, "Yes, young master." Adrian smiled and said that's what he liked to hear. Then he asked the man what he thought about working for him instead. He told him not to worry. He would never put him in danger. He always considered himself a merciful man. All he wanted was for him to write false reports. His little friend would be arrested in his place. Adrian asked if he accepted, and the spy said yes. Back in Cedric's office, Cedric wondered how Meltz had been caught. The spy giving his false report said Meltz had been caught trying to enter the commander's quarters. This made Cedric more cautious. He muttered that this was a mess, thinking it happened because he ignored his father's advice not to send spies after Adrian. His father had already scolded him for not being chosen for the army, and now it was too late. Cedric told the spy to keep watching and report everything. The spy, now deceiving young Master Cedric, said he would report everything to him later. Adrian thought that now that he had dealt with another spy, things would get much easier with this man's help. The others were progressing very well. He had recruited another 20 people with some form of talent. Eric and Alexia had proven to be very capable of leading the school. Everyone was giving their best, and Adrian knew he couldn't fall behind either. He finally reached level 59 and thought that just one more level and he would become a 6th circle mage, but to his surprise, a message appeared, declaring a state of emergency. He exited the game and asked his subordinate for a report. The subordinate informed him that Imperial combat ships had entered their airspace. They had received orders to remain on standby. War was about to begin. Adrian thought this truly marked the end of the calm before the storm. In the meeting room, they discussed the Imperial Cassing army moving toward them. Count Watts announced that local forces had been ordered to remain still. The troops would be gathered onto the train where they would be dispatched at any moment. All rest and meals would take place on the train. From that point on, spatial coordinate interference would begin. The entire front line bordering the Kayan Empire was almost out of signal. They weren't even to consider using teleportation. It would be suicide. From now on, all personal communication among the troops would be cut off, except for the colonel and higher ranks. Only radio communication would be allowed, and this applied directly to Adrian as well. Watts warned him not to stay in a room without a radio. Then Count Watts stood and told everyone that this was war, and they had to be ready at all times. Adrian thought to himself that the war had finally begun. He had just leveled up again, reaching level 160, and believed that now he would finally attain the 6th circle. He thought that in the end it was worth playing a bit, even though he remembered that other guy telling him not to play and to prepare for war. He felt a little guilty, but this was much more important to him. As a reward, he received more than 10 trillion lots, and the money he got was deposited in the Elysia Union Bank. He also received another reward, his sub-support, the supersonic Black Eagle, a gigantic eagle. He wondered if sub-supports were even supposed to exist in this game. This eagle was a combat support meant for an archer. He figured it might be easier to find correct information in reality than through the game system. When he returned to reality, he asked where the eagle was. He went outside to see if it was there. Stepping out of the spaceship, he thought the massive black eagle might appear the same way Urxia once did, in a dramatic, chaotic entrance. But as he looked around, Urxia noticed that the eagle was already approaching them directly. To everyone's surprise, the soldiers armed themselves and the brigade commander was told to dodge immediately, but the eagle landed right on top of the massive spaceship. The gigantic bird looked straight at Adrian and stood in front of him. Adrian gave the command for the soldiers to stand down, realizing that this was the supersonic Black Eagle. It was a chimera with the bones and legs of a black dragon and a body that could hardly be damaged, not even by an aura blade, with an ultra-high recovery rate. It had only one skill, shared vision. Like Archia, it would unlock other skills as it grew stronger. He patted the eagle and said that the most likely condition for gaining new skills must be completing missions. He wasn't sure how this suicidal dive-bombing behavior would be useful, but the shared vision was definitely a huge asset. It was like receiving information at the speed of light. A crowd began to gather around him, asking what that creature was. Adrian thought to himself that this was a mess. He was so focused on the Black Eagle that he didn't even notice the people forming around him. There wasn't much he could do now. So he asked the eagle if it wanted to stay by his side. The eagle nodded, confirming it did. and he began to pet it like they were best friends. Everyone was shocked, not understanding why the eagle wasn't attacking. Adrian, on the other hand, thought it was a little embarrassing and felt like the eagle might bite him later. It was then stated that after the war began, the situation didn't just spark small battles in other regions, it expanded across the entire western border. It had become a full-scale war, but thanks to that, his brigade was making its debut. Internet communication remained disabled, so he couldn't log into the game for now. To his surprise, someone came reporting that the vanguard pilot of the Crowing Empire was approaching. Adrian told them not to panic and to retreat the army into the initial formation. He also told Bilan to prepare the vanguards. Although many of these battles had occurred in the game, he didn't believe he would die so easily. The guy next to him just kept staring. Adrian asked what was wrong, but the man said it was nothing. Still, Adrian sensed enemy vanguards approaching and realized they were under attack. He told the 2nd Battalion to activate the energy shield, which surprised everyone. They quickly activated it just in time. To their shock, one of the enemy vanguards attacked them directly, causing a tremor in the spaceship. Adrian thought that the attack came from such a long distance and was unbelievably strong. This wasn't just a test. If they didn't have a 7th circle mage or higher, it was obvious they wouldn't survive this kind of battle. He asked for a status report, and the ship's operators informed him that the 2nd Battalion's energy shield was gone. It would take 90 seconds to recover. Adrian thought that the shield, which was supposed to protect everyone, was destroyed by a single attack. Archduke Lucas should have crafted some magical equipment for them, but Adrian didn't need to envy the enemy vanguard. If he reached the max level in the game, he would reach the 9th circle. Archia then asked if he was alright, and Adrian said yes. He thought that in the end he had an 8th circle grandmaster, Archia, right by his side. The vice commander commented that they had managed to survive, and if it weren't for Adrian, they would all be dead. Adrian replied that he was just lucky, but he hoped he wouldn't have to go back on his words. Now, he had to think about how to defend or counterattack. The size of their offensive forces wasn't all that different, but the issue was the enemy's fortress. The Crowing Empire had 2 fortresses in the sky, but they were significantly smaller than theirs, probably designed for a massive invasion. The vice commander said that unless the enemy had lost information, this was the first time they had used those fortresses. Adrian thought that in this war there were vanguards on the ground and fortified floating fortresses in the sky. The ground was completely devastated and all the variables seemed to be right there. To their surprise, the spaceships continued attacking. Adrian muttered that everything was a mess. Then he felt something else, a weapon detachment process. He asked what it was and what had just fallen. Some soldiers laughed, saying it had broken in the end, and it was honestly kind of funny. But Adrian began receiving several notifications of magical power overload and realized this was bad. He quickly ordered a message to be sent to the fortress because a total suicide attack was about to occur. To their shock, that suicide attack actually happened. A massive explosion took over the sky. Now, in the Sky Fortress, they received the message and realized it was a suicide attack. The commander orders an immediate evacuation and commands them to use anti-aircraft bullets, personal firearms, or anything else they have. Use everything. Meanwhile, the protagonist thinks he's going to break, so he activates the Great Shield on his ring, which covers his entire spaceship. In this way, they manage to protect themselves from the great explosion, but he thinks it was a close call. If he hadn't used the artifact his father gave him, they all would have died. He wonders about the Sky Fortress, but when he looks, he feels relieved. They didn't fall as they quickly retreated. If the Sky Fortress and their allied forces had fallen, the enemy forces would have massacred everyone. He then requests them to check the status of the vanguards and the wounded soldiers. After the incident, Kondiets is smiling a lot and thanking the boy for his hard work. His performance was excellent. If he hadn't noticed the enemy's suicide attack in advance, the damage would have been colossal. The enemies attempted suicide attacks on 3 battlefields simultaneously, but his unit was the only one to detect the anomaly early and successfully protected the fortress. He told the local commander that today's victory was thanks to him, and he's sure the boy will receive a great reward. The protagonist responds saying that's great. Then, Kondiets says that it's up to a good leader to ensure his subordinates are rewarded when they contribute. The protagonist thinks that despite many people worshipping their superiors excessively, Kondiets is reasonably decent. That Count mentions that there are some strange rumors circulating about him. Adder asks what kind of rumors, and they heard that the brigade commander Lawrence tamed a mysterious giant eagle along with his companion. They say the way he communicates with the eagle is truly mysterious. Edra asks if that's true, saying he didn't know, but then thinks to himself that he actually did. That guy continues, saying that once they are domesticated, they never betray their masters and don't hesitate to risk their lives to protect them. Edra feels happy that the Archmage Lucas based this on real-life species. If he had given him a flashy support creature without reason, people would have been irritated, asking what that thing was. It would have been hard to deal with. Condiats. Very happy, says that it's no different from a dog and can be called an eagle dog. Then Laterace asks if now that the enemy has retreated, he can use the internet. When he is told yes, he takes that as his reward. The boy is very happy, thinking he'll finally be able to play again. Now 2 weeks have passed since the beginning of the war. Speaking with Mr. Billy, someone tells him not to expose himself too much while descending the mountains, as it could be a trap. They are told not to get too close and to try fighting from a distance. They agree, and the boy thinks that no one would have listened to Brigade Commander Lawrence in the past, but now they all follow his orders. Billen instructs them not to blindly trust the radar signal and to follow Commander Lawrence's instructions. Berlin reflects that everyone has changed in just 2 weeks, and to their surprise, it really was a trap. Berlin orders them to retreat. He had thought they would come from beneath the terrain, as it was the only blind spot, and he's happy he listened to Commander Lawrence's warning. Otherwise, they would have been caught off guard. He thinks they avoided total annihilation by luck, but the situation still doesn't look good. They have to hold the vanguard attacks at bay while they wait for support. However, they're heavily outnumbered, and it will take at least 5 minutes for reinforcements to arrive. It's impossible to wait without taking any damage. To his surprise, Adre orders him to advance. As he realizes what's happening, others arrive to assist 10 vanguards directly under the command of Commander Condit's division. Billy notices that they are indeed reinforcements, but he doesn't understand how they got there so fast. Audra speaks to him over the communicator, saying the enemies have their backs to the mountain. William thinks, that soft voice again. He really doesn't know who came out on patrol, because it certainly wasn't Adrian Lawrence. They are told to eliminate at least 5 enemy vanguard units while they have the chance. The people in the strategy room ask if they heard the order from Brigade Commander Lawrence to take out 5 enemy vanguards. They say he's truly incredible. Not only did he foresee the surprise attack, but he also turned a crisis into an opportunity. Furthermore, while other units were struggling at post-focus, Commander Lawrence's team was handling things calmly. Condijits thinks he initially believed it was just a coincidence, but with how things are turning out, it doesn't seem like it anymore. Wasn't it said that the prodigy of Viscount Lawrence turned into an idiot after being poisoned, but now it feels like a dragon hiding its power while it sleeps? He asks the others if Lawrence is about the same age. Michelle, if her family allows it, he would like to bring her there, which surprises everyone. Why would he want to offer his daughter to Adrian Lawrence? They say he already has a girlfriend and they're very close. He even took her to the battlefield. But Watt says that's not a problem, and if Michelle wants, she can be his mistress. They say Adrian is addicted to games, but Kodos defends him, asking if it's not better to be addicted to that than to drugs, alcohol, or women. He thinks to himself that he has already chosen Adrian as his son-in-law and no one will make him change his mind. However, some of the others say that considering Miss Michelle's fiery personality, if she hears that, they'll be in trouble. She's a bit hot-headed. Condats interrupts and says, enough about his daughter, they must send the performance report to the command corps, and they must make sure to highlight Commander Lawrence's major contribution. As the boy and Arce are leaving, Billen asks to speak with him for a moment. Adrian agrees, asking if it's something important, and tells him to be quick. He notices that Billen's emotional condition has changed from curious and watchful to favorable and anxious. He wonders if it's because he saved him during the battle. Bilan then asks why he hides his strength. Many of his subordinates are worried about the future of the territory. If young Master Cedric becomes the Lord as things are going now, there will definitely be a crisis. He believes Cedric is unfit to be a lord. If Adrian has any intention of competing with his brother, Bilan would like to offer his full support, which greatly surprises the boy. He thinks to himself that the magical glasses don't show any false interactions, so this man isn't lying. Sir Bilan is one of his father's closest aides. He wonders if Billen received some instructions in advance or if he's acting this way simply because Adrian is his benefactor. Adrian thanks him for his words but says he'll pretend he didn't hear that, which greatly surprises Billen. As Adrian walks away, he thinks he's not naive. Billen spoke without thinking things through. No matter what they do to keep information from Cedric, Adrian cannot act carelessly. There are surveillance systems he doesn't even know about. He thinks that he alone is more than enough, and the task of taking down and Cedric is entirely his. He has no intention of sharing that satisfaction with anyone. But for now, he will remember that there are people who are genuinely concerned about the beast within the territory. Thinking about it, he realizes he'll be awarded a medal for what happened, but he assumes it won't be a big deal. However, to his surprise, the man reading the list of contributions announces that the second son of the Lawrence family, Adrian, will receive the Golden Lion Medal, second class, awarded by Sias van Heerd, the 23rd king of the Hay Kingdom. All the soldiers around begin to celebrate. Adrian thinks this is far greater than he had imagined. He believes he's being chosen as a Fantastra and they'll adore him for the rest of his life. He also thinks Cedric is probably going to lose his mind when he hears this. Back at home, after Cedric and his mother receive the news, Cedric says that everyone is talking about that idiot Adrian. If he had gone to war, all those merits would have been his. He asks what his father is saying about all this, and his mother tells him that his father is going to stay with that poor woman. Cedric says it seems like his father has been spending more and more time with her lately. He asks his mother why she's not doing anything about it. She asks what she's supposed to do. Should she poison him too? Cedric gets irritated with the way she talks and tells her not to raise her voice. His mother says the reason his father is with that woman is because he's determined to protect that commoner from all of them while Adrian's away at war. Cedric asks if it's true that Adrian will completely cut ties with the family after returning from war. She says yes, and that's why Cedric is desperate to achieve some merit and get a title. She asks her son to calm down because he's not even Adrian's rival, and she will make sure of that. Cedric agrees, thinking everything is just as his mother said. Behind them is his maternal grandfather. Most of the viscounty is under his mother's control, and his father is only a proxy, temporarily governing the land until it's passed on to him. Cedric then wonders why that brat always thought he was better than him. Furious, Cedric thinks Adrian is incredibly annoying. He was supposed to be reduced to a worthless bastard after they tried to poison him. He doesn't understand why he still gets under his skin. He thinks Adrian definitely has to die. Now, in the 7th week, 48 days after the war began, Adrian is in a good mood and asks the vanguards to please drink an energy drink before heading out. He hands out drinks to everyone, listening to them say they feel increasingly refreshed after drinking it. The protagonist thinks that considering how precious it is, of course they would. What they're drinking is actually diluted elixir containing just a single drop of that legendary medicine, but they surely don't know that. He thinks it's honestly a waste, but he has to do this so that the war can end quickly. Then Billen says that now they're going out on patrol. The protagonist asks the vanguards to be careful, but to his surprise, he learns that the division commander is looking for him. He asks what that means. As he heads toward the division commander, he feeds Crow the name he gave to the Black Eagle. He remarks that Condotes has been calling him more frequently lately. The guy driving him says that it means Condotes really trusts him and asks if that isn't a good thing. But the protagonist thinks that even if it is, it's annoying to be constantly summoned by a high-ranking aristocrat. When he arrives, he notices that the other unit commanders are also present, and no one knows why. Everyone seems surprised, not understanding Condiote's intention. If it were something related to battle, he could have simply sent a message. The protagonist wonders if there's an important announcement. Then Condiote suddenly appears and welcomes them. He tells them they should rejoice because they won't have to hear those disgusting gunshots anymore. Peace may soon be declared. This surprises the protagonist greatly. CIEs explains that foreign ministers from both countries are currently in a meeting and a declaration of the end of the war may happen soon. It seems the people from Sichuan never intended for this to become a full-scale war in the first place. It was large in scale but ultimately a local conflict, no different from an annual event. People comment that those guys are completely insane, but the protagonist thinks it was the same in his previous life. He believes his country has always had bad luck when it comes to foreign relations. He asks what will happen to the vanguards who were sent out. Coach says that until an official declaration of peace is made, they must continue playing this war game. The protagonist thinks that it's always the subordinates who die because of decisions made by their superiors. Condiotis tells him to relax and not worry about anything else. Bilan says that he thinks this is a good thing. He asks what would have happened if his country and the cruising empire had gone into full-scale war. Without celestial fortresses, tens of thousands of vanguards would have been annihilated. It would have been an unimaginable catastrophe. Adre asks if Bilan shouldn't be resting more. Why did he come here? Meanwhile, Arsai is in the corner, still eating her biscuits. He takes one and offers it to Bilan, who says that since it was given by Condiotes, it must be quite valuable. Adrian notices that Arsai keeps eating without paying him any mind. Bilan says he's felt this before. Adrian is truly different from other nobles. He sincerely mourns the sacrifices of common soldiers and even stands guard at the command center while his men rest. He really is different. The protagonist thinks, of course, he used to be a commoner in his past life. Bilan adds that at the same time, Adrian possesses the composure and dignity of a true noble. The protagonist says he thinks Bilan misunderstood that part, but Bilan asks if it's not true that Adrian was drinking black tea even while enemy troops approached. He says that kind of calm is impossible without absolute confidence in oneself. His subordinates were even able to relax because of his composure. Everyone in the 23rd Brigade trusts him completely. The protagonist now understands what Bilan is trying to say. He's once again expressing support for Adrian as the successor of the territory. Adrian replies just like last time, but to his surprise, Sir Bilan kneels before him and says that they've ensured no one is nearby and have checked for surveillance devices. So there's no need to worry. This shocks Adrian. He analyzes the surroundings and realizes Bilan is serious, and it seems all of them are on his father's side. Adrian says he knows precautions were taken, but this kind of behavior could draw too much attention. Bilan replies that's exactly why they came while everyone else is resting. Then, the humble servant Gilbert Bilan declares that he would like to serve Adrian Lawrence, the second young master of the Lawrence family, as his lord from now on. The protagonist asks if the other knights outside feel the same. Bilan confirms they do, which surprises Adrian even more. Adrian agrees but says there's one condition: they must act normally until he says otherwise. Wouldn't it be rude for Bilan to pretend he isn't his lord? And even if he begins gathering power now, his forces still won't be large. He asks if it will be enough for them to win. He says he has a plan in mind, so they just need to follow his orders. Bilan agrees. The protagonist then asks how many knights are willing to follow him. Bilan says they currently have 5 vanguards there, and about 30 knights. If they gather people from the territory, their number will at least double. Adrian thinks that's not bad. It means he'll have more people to work with. He says it's good, but just before he leaves, Bilan says there's one more thing. His lady plans to assign Sir Precious to him. Bilan believes it would be a good idea to recruit him in advance. This greatly surprises Adrian. He thinks about Sir Precious. Precious was originally the vice commander of the Lawrence Order of Knights, and with his superior skills he practically had He was considered a rival among all aura specialists with the exception of the knight commanders. But Adrian thought he had left the order because he was involved in the family's political struggle centered around a netter. He wonders if someone like that is really coming back. Bilan says that maybe when he returns, many knights who were neutral might change their minds. Adrian thinks that Sir Precious was a typical warrior and a very popular knight. In other words, there is room to expand his power through him that might be enough to compete with Anna's and Cedric's forces. He realizes that recruiting Sir Precious isn't a bad idea, especially since he's a valuable talent outside of his immediate family. So he says that he needs to find him as soon as possible. He asks if Bilan could arrange a meeting between them. Discreetly, of course. Bilan says yes, he'll take care of it for him. Adrian thinks that soon he will have power, and that is certainly a good thing. However, his top priority isn't building his own power. His top priority is completing the next mission of the Lucky Encounter event, progressing in the game, and finally reaching the 7th circle today. But to everyone's surprise, the protagonist dies along with Archia, and even his new eagle dies too. The system announces that he was killed by a mysterious being. Then, the scene flashes back to a few minutes earlier, when they were still fighting that man. Adrian thought that even after hunting level 200 enemies, he had never experienced death before. He avoided dying in the game by overcoming difficulties, but if he were to die there, the pain would be beyond his imagination. He notices that Archia is being pushed back, something that had never happened before. She had always prioritized her safety in a fight. Then, as the eagle dives at the enemy, the man quickly defends against both and prepares to finish Adrian with his sword. His name is Death Knight Pasquiel. Facing him, Adrian realizes that he is not just an aura master, but also has a mission boss buff and an abnormally strong body. He is clearly on a completely different level. As a result, Adrian dies and respawns in a nearby village. Sitting on a bench in the village, he thinks the system is garbage. It shares all his senses. He can't even complain about the pain properly because there are too many people around. When he summons his support, Arkasha, she starts apologizing to Adrian, asks if she's okay, and if she feels pain, she replies that she does, but her senses in the game are far less intense than his. He thinks it's a relief, and reflects that he recruited her only because of her tank stats. The more he thinks about it, the more ashamed he feels for hiding his small body behind hers. That's why he wants to change his combat style. Fighting the Death Knight showed him the clear limits of his current fighting strategy. Archia blocks movement, the eagle blocks vision, and then he attacks by surprise. As a mage, he deals a lot of damage. It worked before, since they had many weapons, but this has a limit when facing someone like the Death Knight who's on the same level as Archia. That means the only way to keep enemies away during his casting time is by using the Black Eagle in combat. But he thinks about Archia's defense against the Death Knight and how, if he had more consistent damage output to support her while he casts spells, that would be the ideal combat style. He comes up with 3 possible solutions. Use lower-level magic circles. That would reduce casting time, though at the cost of power, but the casting rate would be higher. 2. Use the Black Eagle as a warrior instead of a support unit. 3. Archia should stop relying solely on her shield for defense and start using offensive tactics. However, the first option basically nerfs him, so the second and third are better. He tells Archia it won't be easy. Then they go into a second battle against the Death Knight, but die miserably again. The eagle didn't do much damage, but its distraction was helpful, so he wonders if he should equip it with a chest plate. He thinks he must do everything he can to complete this trial and reach the 7th circle. Now, they enter the 3rd battle and die again. Adrian, furious, says this is terrible. Then he tells Archia that they've started to recognize the Death Knight's pattern and they must try new things to regain their edge. By the 5th battle, the Death Knight asks if he's fighting a bunch of acrobats. He clearly sees Adrian as very talented and asks why he doesn't just change classes. Adrian replies that he must be confused, but then asks if he's ever heard of a human bombarder and fires magic at him. Adrian tells him to die, but the Death Knight blocks it with his sword. Quickly, Archie attacks from below and Adrian says, "Perfect." But to his surprise, the Black Eagle can no longer lift him, and simply lands, dropping him to the ground. The Death Knight says it's good to see him down there. Adrian looks up at him, completely unsettled, and his head is cut off again. They tried many strategies to defeat the Death Knight, but failed every time. However, Adrian notices that the damage dealt increased in the last fight. He continues casting spells while dodging attacks, which remains his biggest challenge. Now he wants to try using better items. He focused on his reflexes instead of concentrating on casting spells. Once again, he was defeated. On the next attempt, he was already dodging much better, able to avoid the enemy's strike and cast 2 spells in his direction. Archia also attacked from the other side, but that guy still managed to finish them both. However, the protagonist gave a small smile, thinking that this battle confirmed something for him. He had tried to be an aggressive mage, which reduced his overall damage, but allowed him to survive longer on his own. The result was a 62-minute battle in which he dealt 84% of the damage to the Death Knight. He believes that if he keeps trying, he'll definitely succeed. He logs out and returns to his room, realizing that he's exceeded the connection time. He tells Archia that he thought they'd hit level 200 by now, but instead they're stuck in an unexpected place. While stretching, he notices that the world seems to be moving more slowly. Archia explains that experiencing death countless times has side effects, so it's normal to feel some changes. He asks her if she feels the same, and she says she's not sure. Her body feels just as strong as it did yesterday, but somehow she feels stronger. The protagonist wonders if that's true. Arcia's responses certainly don't seem artificial. They aren't like something a homunculus would say. He thinks that if time passes and she gains more experiences, she will become almost indistinguishable from a real human. She asks if he has any orders, but the protagonist tells her no, he needs to sleep and rest. They'll try again after they wake up. The next day, he enters his 12th battle against the Death Knight, dealing 75% damage. In the 13th, he dealt 85%. In the 14th, 91%. The 15th, 89%. The 16th, 93%. The 17th, 98%. In the 18th battle, the protagonist, along with Arcia and the Eagle, is finally ready to defeat the Death Knight. After an intense fight, they deal 100% damage. The Death Knight begins to vanish and says he did well. The protagonist, overjoyed, starts to celebrate. He has finally passed the test and completed the 7th level of the mission. To his surprise, someone tells him that it's because all of this is real. The protagonist turns and realizes that there are two enemies. He quickly points his staff at one of them, but to his surprise, Arcia tells him not to worry. The protagonist wonders why she's smiling so much. What he didn't expect was to see a little old man staring at him. Then he realizes with a shock that this must be Archduke Lucas in miniature form, but the man says his name is Chester, and he is the one who oversees destiny. He is part of Manuel Lucas, essentially an NPC, but created from Manuel Lucas's memories. The protagonist thinks that even though Chester was created from those memories, that doesn't guarantee he'll help them. Still, he would undoubtedly be a huge help if he's on their side, but if not, it'll be trouble. Chester tells him there's no reason to be apprehensive. Adrian says that he doesn't seem like an NPC, he's too different from the others and feels truly alive. Chester replies that of course he does. He might not have a soul, but he was made to act a certain way based on the memories of someone who lived. The protagonist then says that even if he couldn't defeat old age in the end, he will always live on here. He asks if Manuel Lucas achieved eternity. Chester replies that it could be seen that way, that was the main reason Hollywood was created, but he adds nothing is eternal. He is merely a shadow of someone who once lived. If the original idea had been to create a true clone to live forever, it wouldn't have been done in the virtual world. It would have been through something like a homunculus, like Arcia. Adrian thinks he once suspected that Manuel Lucas might try to possess him to be reborn, but thankfully that's not the case. He then asks Chester what his role is there and mentions how frustrating the last floor was due to its difficulty. He wonders if he'll now stop fighting and focus on other areas. Chester raises his staff and displays a status window. Adrian realizes he has received 5 uses of the administrator authority of the Hollywood system. Chester explains that the destiny he's been given is everything Manuel Lucas had. It was already expected that he would inherit administrative authority as well. However, there are some limitations for now, although eventually those limits will disappear. In the future, there will be no usage limits. The protagonist asks what he can do with this power. Chester replies that he'll be able to use that authority in any program based on the Hollywood system. This surprises the protagonist greatly. Essentially, Hollywood is a virtual world not unlike the internet on Earth, where he can access any information and modify practically everything that exists. However, Chester adds, there are some rules he must follow. He cannot use the authority in online chronicles that are tied to Manuel Lucas's destiny. 2. He cannot use it to access or invade other users' brains. 3. He cannot use it to steal other people's property. 4. He cannot use it to harm the world, either directly or indirectly. The protagonist thinks it's a bit concerning, but it makes sense. He then jokingly asks if he can use this authority to launder money. Chester replies that it's not hard and even recommends a few methods personally, but Adrian asks if it isn't too risky. Couldn't someone audit the documents? And then the little guy says that the chance of them noticing this is low since it's not just the current reports, it would basically mean manipulating the entire market. With that, our protagonist says that he'd like to use one of his administrator permissions. Chester then tells him that his current wealth is 12.625 trillion lots and asks if he'd like to organize the lots and equipment he'll receive from this floor. The protagonist agrees. Then Chester asks if there's anything else. The protagonist says that Arkia needs a registration and it would be good to make her origin the holy city of Everil. Sester replies that of course, and that he will register her as someone whose family has passed away, marking her current status as orphan. When the protagonist asks Chester if he would help him with the administrator authority, Chester says yes, but then a woman asks why he's gone so far for people he didn't even know. Chester responds that this is his way of showing affection and care for the world he left behind, so that the life of his successor wouldn't be as difficult as his own. This leaves Adrian quite confused, as those don't seem like the words of someone remembered as a legendary mage. If it weren't for this world, if not for someone from Earth like him, and if he hadn't created a legacy for future generations, his life would have been pathetic. He couldn't have dreamed of becoming who he is now, so he kneels down and thanks his master. But Chester says that he is not Manhwa Lucas, though the protagonist notices a small smile at the corner of his mouth. Thus, he acquires another 50 trillion lots, and also receives the sky fortress of Icarus. His 7th circle is now complete. Meanwhile, in the city of Nichin, the former captain of the Order of Knights, Perseus, asks who Arian is. The knight says he believes that the young Master Arian might be able to take control of the territory and develop it even further. He asks Perseus if he intends to support young Master Arian alongside him. But Perseus wonders what kind of nonsense that is. He thought he was called for a meeting about the Lord, and if he had known it was to talk privately about an immature child, he never would have agreed to come. But the knight says that young Master Adrian is a prodigy. Perseus responds that he heard Adrian stood out in the war, but asks whether the knight doesn't think his chosen successor is still too weak. The knight apologizes, but then starts laughing, which greatly surprises Perseus. The knight says he wasn't laughing at him, he just remembered that not long ago he was in the same position himself. He believes young Master Arian was lucky this time, but that he is still the same as always. Perseus asks if that's really the case, and the knight replies that it certainly is not. In fact, what the young master shows the world is only the tip of the iceberg. Unlike Perseus, the knight has personally witnessed his abilities. After all, it was he who was on the front lines following the commands of Master Adrian. Therefore, he confidently says that Adrian is without a doubt the greatest genius of this era. Perseus won't understand that until he sees it for himself. Perseus remarks that the knight seems completely devoted to the young master. He reflects on the story of a prodigy who became mediocre at the age of 7, a mask used to become someone great and survive from a young age. Considering Adrian's intelligence and the knight's words, Perseus has to admit that Adrian deserves his attention. He then asks the knight Berlin what he wants to do. Berlin says Perseus should use his connections to convince the vassals to support young Master Adrian. Perseus says that it's a bit complicated, but still interesting. Berlin says he made a great decision, but Perseus responds that he hasn't decided anything yet. Before making any decisions, he should at least meet Adrian. So Balian says that young Master Adrian would be delighted to visit him soon and that he'll call him to share the news. While speaking with Adrian through communication magic, Perseus thinks to himself that Adrian is someone who spent over a decade hiding his power, waiting for the right moment for revenge. That's truly something. He hopes Balian's words are true. But to both their surprise, Adrian simply ends the call. Belen says that Adrian must be very busy to answer right now. But then, to their shock, something appears right behind them. They sense a mana presence, and it must be at least at the 7th circle. They wonder who in the world it could be. After finishing, she announces that the 5 assassins have been killed. The protagonist comments that maybe he had too high expectations. He had heard these 2 were the most powerful in the continent, yet they allowed themselves to be surrounded by assassins. The 2 men wonder what kind of attitude that is, and who this monster in front of them really is. Ilan asks what happened. The protagonist says he spent 13 years preparing for this moment and asks if they really thought he'd be unprepared. Of course, he would have an aura master at his side. This surprises both men greatly. Perseus thinks that initially he wanted to test Adrian's worth, but now realizes it's he who must prove himself useful. That's the kind of person standing before him. While still stunned, the protagonist looks at Perseus, sees his status window, and thinks to himself that he's not bad at all. Will then asks whether the lady of the house sent them, and Adrian responds that obviously they must have a lot of questions. Then he snaps his fingers and casts Reparo, or restoration magic, repairing the entire house. Bilan comments that the stains, the blood and bodies vanished. It was truly incredible, but our boy simply asked them not to think too much about it, and said they needed to go somewhere else. He then activated another spell, shocking both of them as they realized it was a seventh circle spell called teleportation. Meanwhile, in the Kingdom of Luas, part of the Hate Kingdom Alliance, the nation with the largest number of great mages, second only to the four great empires, if you asked anyone who the most famous mage was, they would all say one name: Duke Kane Riverdale. A great mage and a successful teacher who had trained 6 seventh circle mages. They all said the same thing. The greatest mage in history was Archduke Lucas, but the greatest teacher was Duke Kane Riverdale. Picamlo questioned if that was serious. Was he really a disciple of Duke Riverdale? And Adrian confirmed that he was, though he had died a few years ago. It was Riverdale who taught him everything he knew, and Adrian was able to learn it all without difficulty. This left Peely wondering when he had even trained, considering he spent most of his time in games, but Oscoto interrupted his thoughts and confirmed it. Yes, that was exactly it. The only place where he could train him without any restrictions was in the virtual world. Riverdale taught in both the real world and the virtual one. Still, Peely couldn't believe it. It sounded like a lie. A marquee falling from the sky. No one would believe someone like that was only 20 years old. It was better that people believed in the story, because if he used the title of Riverdale's disciple, no one would question him. Pacius commented that Adrian was certainly an eccentric man. To their surprise, the boy had even prepared fake evidence to support his story, proof that he was indeed a disciple of Duke Riverdale. He had asked Administrator Chester to create it as an alibi, and now he held various artifacts with Riverdale's aura, as well as a record claiming he had been a secret disciple that no one else knew about. That way, even the Riverdale family or his known disciples could trust him if they ever crossed paths. Adrian said he would have loved to declare himself the heir of Manuel Lucas's destiny, but no one would leave him in peace for the rest of his life if he did. He then told the two of them that he and Archia would handle Anna and Cedric, so they shouldn't worry too much about expanding their influence or gathering people. Pacius asked why he had been called there. Then, the boy replied that this was never part of his plan to begin with, but there was something he needed him to do. He asked him to extend his left hand. When they touched watches, a window appeared in front of the boy. Explained that it was his second bank account, holding 20 billion lots, and asked him to form a group under his command to gather intelligence. This group would be in charge of doing the dirty work, a necessary part of achieving his plans. It was curious that he asked a knight for that kind of task, but Patrius acknowledged that considering they would be facing Marquis Haven, it might be necessary. Still, he asked if he was sure. That amount of money must have been hard, maybe even impossible to accumulate. But the boy asked him not to worry. He had acquired it very easily, thanks to his great talent for investing. In fact, he thought Patrius might faint if he knew he actually had 3,000 times that amount. Then he extended his hand again to Pacius and declared that he would remove Cedric from his position as heir to the family and would gain a level of power no one in the nation could disrespect. He asked Pacius if he would stand with him. Pacius knelt and pledged his loyalty. Back at Adrian's home, his stepmother was furious, saying that 5 expert assassins had vanished without leaving a trace. The butler confirmed this. She shouted that he had promised they could kill anyone, even a master of aura or a great mage. The butler agreed, but she angrily threw a wineglass at his head. After calming down a little, she asked where Pacius and Billion were. The butler said that Mr. Billion had returned to his unit, but Pacius had completely disappeared. She realized he must still be alive. Billion would have reported it if he were dead. She suspected those two were conspiring against her and couldn't ignore it. She remembered that her husband had told her to monitor Adrian and Sylvia closely. She felt she had no choice but to obey, because opposing Viscount Lawrence would be even worse. Still, if Billion and Pacius joined forces, they'd be unstoppable. She couldn't let them act freely because Cedric couldn't afford to have a rival. Time was running out. The butler asked if she wanted to deal with the Assassin's Guild again, since they had guaranteed they would finish the job. She questioned whether they should just kill Adrian, shocking the butler. In her sly way, she asked if he was afraid. "This is the easiest path," she said. "Yes, it's the only way. Don't even think about another option." The butler warned that if she went through with it, there would be no going back with Viscount Lawrence. Besides, young Master Adrian was now very famous. But she, seething with rage, asked how long he had worked for her. Trembling, the butler replied that it had been 30 years. She reminded him that he should know by now that she hates being contradicted. She poured wine over his head and asked if he thought she didn't know what he was up to. There was no other way, she claimed. Do you think you're smarter than me? She hissed. The butler thought he had tried to help only because of a spark of remorse for the young master. He knelt and begged for forgiveness, but she said, "Forgiveness? No, I'm going to frame you." That left the poor man utterly stunned. The viscount is dying, and someone needs to take responsibility for it. All this time, he had shown loyalty to her, so it would be easier this time. She asks him what's wrong and if he isn't loyal to her. Trembling, he replies that he understands and will prove his loyalty. She says that's the perfect answer and orders him to make sure they don't fail again, or else everyone will be killed. The man thinks that she's discarding him after 30 years of loyalty just because he said the wrong thing at the wrong time, and it's too late to go back. If the young master manages to overcome this trial, maybe he can survive. Meanwhile, at the house of Count Diotes, they are celebrating the victory of the 23rd Division. They say they can finally return, and Count Diotes says he never thought he would receive recognition, thanks to young Master Lawrence. He's truly looking forward to the ceremony. The men beside him say that their family status has also improved thanks to him. They assure him that they will be their family's heirs and invite him to visit any time, promising to welcome him with everything they have. Our protagonist thinks they're taking credit for what he did, but he understands this is normal. It all happened because His Excellency trusted him and supported him with his great wisdom. However, Count Diotes says it would have been better if the war had lasted a bit longer, which surprises our protagonist. He asks what he means, and Walton explains that if the war had continued, he would have received more recognition and possibly become a lord. But with the current situation, the compensation will be limited to him only. Our protagonist realizes there's a big difference between inheriting a title and earning one on your own. No matter how much he rises in rank, without a county of his own, he can't pass on his title. Seeing Count Diotes looking a bit down, he says he didn't fight expecting anything in return. Diotes replies that it's a real shame. He has so much potential but lacks an environment where he can truly shine. That makes him sad. Still, he asks the protagonist not to worry about that and says maybe he could get involved with his family, which surprises the boy greatly. Diotes says he has a daughter and that if the protagonist is willing, he could make that happen. Our protagonist smiles and thinks, wait, what? A daughter? Just like that? Diotes asks him to please think it over. He'll always be welcome. But the protagonist also recalls that Count Diotes' daughter is rumored to be a maniac. Still, he thinks that now he can finally return, and for Ina and Cedric, unexpected things are about to happen. Now, the day after the end of the war between Hay and Crescent, the provincial army was immediately disbanded. Back at the airbase, the soldiers thank our protagonist once again and tell him to visit whenever he can. Returning home, the boy logs into his game once again, thinking he's getting tired of leveling up like crazy every time he gets a bit of free time. The level requirement for the level 8 mission is 250, but his current level is only 202. It's been 10 days since he hit level 200, but he doesn't feel like he's making any progress. As he gets stronger, so do the monsters. The experience cap has increased as well, so it's no longer possible to level up once per day like before. He thinks the monster they just killed would require at least 5 people. Maybe he needs to recruit a new member for his group, but he shouldn't draw too much attention. Since he has a stroke of luck, it's better to advance slowly and steadily, eventually reaching the max level. He calls Arkia, but she remains still, and he wonders what's wrong. Just then, a bird appears behind him. He asks what's going on, and suddenly he feels something. Looking around, he wonders if something happened outside. He quickly logs out and sees Artia fighting someone. He activates the large shield in his ring, and Artia says they're assassins, the same ones they dealt with last time. Adrian asks since when assassins use swords, and aura-infused ones at that. Artia replies she's not sure, but they're equipped with aura swords and armor, and there are 3 of them. Our protagonist remains calm despite 3 elite fighters trying to kill him. Artia says Mr. Bilwin was prepared for any attack and delayed them. Their vanguards are dealing with them now. Adrian thinks that if they have 5 vanguards, it shouldn't be hard. However, Artia says it won't be that easy just as the roof of the ship is completely shattered. He looks up and sees a heavily armored golem. Artia says there are 6 in total. Our hero remarks that it seems the madam sent the devil after him instead of Bilan and Sir Perseus. He asks Archia if an aura sword should be enough. She says of course. He grabs his staff and Archia takes her sword. As the monster attacks, Adrian says it's pathetic, she picked the wrong alpha. He then activates a flame explosion spell, burning the golems. Flying above the ship, he calls Archia to fight with him. Meanwhile, the assassin captain receives a call saying something isn't right and they must retreat now. The captain wonders how their plan failed so badly, but to everyone's surprise, 2 explosions send them flying. The man wonders, what kind of monster is hiding in the Lawrence family? Our protagonist defeats the enemies one after another, with Archia fighting by his side. On the communicator, someone tells the captain to escape quickly and to kill the archmage, interfering with their teleportation. The captain wonders if he's going insane. Not only is there an archmage, but also a master of aura. He begins to flee, saying the others are on their own. But quickly, our protagonist casts a spell on the man, and Archa swiftly cuts off his arm. Just as she's about to kill him, Adrian orders her to stop. Adrian says there's no point in him trying to escape. That man thinks it's impossible. They were completely annihilated. Then our boy suggests helping him, but to their surprise, the man suddenly collapses. Adrian asks what happened, and Archia checks his body and says he's dead. It seems he bit into the poison capsule hidden in his teeth. Adrian realizes he doesn't have much experience dealing with assassins and underestimated their determination. Meanwhile, the vanguards question whether young Master Lawrence is truly that strong and if the vice commander knew about it. Dayan responds that young Master Adrian is a disciple of Duke Verdile, which greatly surprises them. Bilan adds that not only they, but the entire family underestimated him. Everyone knows how incredible Duke Verdile is, but he believes young Master Adrian became this powerful because he's something special. He was making plans for the future while acting humbly and deceiving everyone around him just to survive. But now the tides have turned and surely they should reconsider and join him. Adrian thinks to himself that Bilan is definitely skilled at influencing people. Back at home, Adrian's worried mother runs to him and asks if he's okay and if he got hurt anywhere. His father, right behind her, tells him he worked hard. Observing this, Adrian thinks it's completely normal to hold a parade to celebrate after receiving a battlefield medal, but it feels too calm. His father apologizes, saying there should have been a grand reception, but Adrian replies it's fine. He doesn't like noisy events, while thinking that it must be because of Anna and Cedric. His father says that in exchange they prepared a grand banquet and now they will celebrate his return with food and drink. Looking up, Adrian sets his aerial fortress to energy-saving mode. At the banquet, the knights say it was their greatest honor to fight alongside young Master Adrian, and they're very grateful. Then, his father asks how he learned to win people's hearts on the battlefield. But before Adrian can answer, Anna suddenly appears, shouting his name, and Adrian notes it's been 3 months since they last saw each other. Cedric's mother welcomes him, while Adrian thinks Anna looks like she's seen a ghost, and he doesn't understand who that man with her is. He realizes it's Morris Juger, and his impression is one of relief and happiness. He hears that Morris worked for her for 30 years, so why is his impression of him so favorable? To Adrian's surprise, he notices that the one leading Enem and Cedric's faction is Commander Crone, whose impression of Adrian is hostile. Cedric comments that as someone bearing the family name, Adrian did a great job, though it's nothing special, and he should be praised. Adrian smiles, thinking it's nonsense. He'd love to cut their heads off right now, but he needs some justification first. After all the things these bastards did to him, how could he consider giving them a quick death? Cedric calls him a rude bastard and asks if he enjoys being praised. Adrian laughs and says he really thinks Cedric believes he'd be happy hearing compliments. He acts as if he's capable of anything, which surprises everyone, while Adrian thinks that what he truly wants is to create a scene and use it as justification so they'll deserve to die. He tells Cedric that he can already imagine him ignoring tactics and dying recklessly after charging forward, which infuriates Cedric. Adrian then asks if people shouldn't get smarter with age, and that's why his vassals call him an idiot behind his back. Cedric gets even angrier, and Adrian adds that perhaps his ignorance comes from his mother's side, which shocks everyone. Cedric's mother asks what he means by that, and Adrian retorts by asking if she has something to say, telling her to stop pretending to be refined because it doesn't suit her. Cedric laughs and says this brat got even more insolent after returning from the battlefield. He draws his sword, saying Adrian doesn't even know what fear is anymore. Adrian's mother behind him tells Cedric to stop. Adrian is tired after coming from the battlefield and asks him to put the sword away. His father demands to know what he thinks he's doing, but Adrian calmly tells them to stay back and just watch. Cedric approaches and says Adrian is playing tough now. He understands the sudden attitude. It must be because of the investigation into that rebel. He asks how Adrian dares to try and bring down their family and if Bolin has gone mad. This confuses both parents. Cedric accuses Bolin of persuading Adrian to try to destroy their family. His mother says this is absurd and asks if it's really true. Cedric orders them to capture the rebel immediately. To his surprise, no one responds. He shouts, demanding to know what the hell they're doing and why they aren't following his orders. A knight in the back says that if he wants to capture Vice Commander Bolin, he should do it himself. Cedric, furious, charges at Adrian with his sword, but to everyone's shock, Arkia grabs his arm while still chewing on a giant pork leg. Cedric yells, asking what the hell she's doing and why she's so strong. He demands that she let go, but to his surprise, she throws the pork leg right at his head, knocking him unconscious, stunning the commander, Cedric's mother, and everyone else in the room. As Cedric falls to the floor, everyone is left speechless. Adrian just smiles, looking down at the completely disoriented Cedric. But then from the back, their commander tells her to stop. If she crosses the line again, she'll answer to him. Adrian then asks if it's not him who's been crossing the line all this time. After everything he's done, so many things that he probably doesn't even remember. Cedric exclaimed that those bastards dared to hurt him and that they deserved to die. The commander agreed, stating that they indeed deserved death. However, as a vassal, he couldn't harm the second young master, a member of the Lord's family. Cedric questioned what he meant, and the commander clarified that the situation was different for the woman. He had no obligation to consider a commoner who laid hands on a noble. Pointing his sword at her, he questioned whether she thought she was a noble just because she was a noble's lover, and prepared to attack her. To his surprise, others defended her, prompting him to question their actions and demand they retreat immediately. Bolin intervened, stating he wouldn't have drawn his sword if he intended to retreat, and ordered the commander to step away from the Law of Alice. The commander, puzzled, wondered what the Law of Alice meant. He found it strange that even members of Cedric's faction sided with them. Noting that most of these individuals prioritized profit over loyalty, something felt amiss. Looking back, our protagonist noticed reinforcements had arrived. Cedric began to laugh, claiming it was too late for regrets, and that including Bolin, they would all be punished for their crimes. Our protagonist countered, stating they were in the presence of the Lord, and questioned how the Viscount's knights dared to oppose their lord. Cedric ordered the immediate subjugation of those bastards and commanded everyone to attack. Our protagonist assessed that, in terms of numbers, their forces had more soldiers, but they were properly armed, whereas Cedric's faction had over 10 well-equipped soldiers. If a large-scale battle erupted, it would be a one-sided massacre. The commander questioned the futility of their actions, suggesting Cedric had become intoxicated by his own victory and forgotten his position. He emphasized that the family system couldn't be altered due to Cedric's recklessness and that only their side would suffer casualties. The commander laughed, questioning whether he wouldn't be killed immediately. However, even if he survived, only hell awaited him. Our protagonist's father instructed him to use the artifact, and his trembling mother apologized. Cedric dismissed the idea of fleeing and ordered the others to attack. As they advanced, our protagonist labeled them as miserable fools rebelling against their lord and ordered the knights to protect their lord, surprising everyone. The commander questioned his actions, and Adrian declared that anyone could see they were the traitors and that they would end this situation immediately. He instructed Arshia to leave those three to him and handle the rest, then removed the illusion magic. She complied, and to everyone's shock, she swiftly decapitated all those men, leaving the commander utterly stunned. Adrian remarked that Commander Crony had just said something interesting and that a traitor needed discipline. He then struck Crony in the face with his staff. Crony couldn't believe it. The woman was now an aura master, and this gaming addict had just inflicted damage on him. The commander declared that she was an aura master and that they needed to form a formation to confront her, urging them to remain calm as they could handle her. Adrian noted that, despite everything, the commander still managed to give instructions to his subordinates, showcasing his leadership. However, he asserted that nothing would change. The commander questioned what he meant. Our protagonist declared that he was a teacher about to impart a valuable lesson and began activating multiple buffs on himself. The commander realized that magicians could use magic 2 classes below their level without casting, meaning a 7th circle magician could use 5th circle magic without casting. Consequently, our protagonist used the memorize spell, thinking that once magicians became archmages, the so-called weakness of casting nearly vanished. Our female protagonist then unleashed a fiery explosion, burning the commander's body. After he collapsed, our protagonist approached the 2 trembling individuals, stating that they were going to have a lot of fun from now on and asked if they didn't think so. Despite his injuries, the commander lunged at our protagonist, who dodged and questioned why he got up, then proceeded to beat the commander in front of the 2. After the commander fell dead, they wondered how it was possible and how Adrian Lawrence had become an archmage. Our protagonist approached them with a smirk, and they realized they were utterly doomed. Meanwhile, elsewhere, an old man declared that Adrian had dared to lay hands on his daughter, Anna. This man was Raven Margrave, Anna's father and Cedric's grandfather. At the Margraves' residence, he watched all the footage of what had happened to his daughter and grandson. Infuriated, he noted that the video was spreading rapidly across various internet portals and platforms, and by tomorrow, most people would be aware of the situation. He dismissed the online chatter, stating that the opinions of commoners in the virtual world meant nothing. However, even among the nobility, some supported these speculations, though the most they could do was file complaints. He emphasized that no matter how valuable an archmage or aura master might be, this wasn't an era where wars could be won by 1 or 2 superhumans. Furthermore, aiding these 2 meant opposing Haven Margrave, whose military power was equivalent to that of a duke or marquess combined. It would be problematic if someone with a title equal to his, like a duke or marquess, sided with Adrian, but he deemed that highly unlikely. His butler mentioned that the royal family might intervene, but the Margrave argued that, obviously, a young archmage and aura master would attract attention. However, unless it was proven true, they could simply be labeled as imposters. As long as no one believed they were truly an archmage and aura master, there would be no issue. In this era, there is no guarantee that a video can't be artificially created, so they must announce that the video was fabricated. Through this video, they aim to expose that he is the one behind Anna and Cedric. Those foolish commoners are acting exactly as expected, merely trying to find justification, which is what they truly want. This surprises the trio greatly. They wonder why he would provoke a Margrave, but Margrave asks how many of their forces can be mobilized in a territorial war. One of the men replies that approximately half of their total forces can be deployed. For territorial defense, they can mobilize either 3 flying fortresses and 50 vanguards, or 2 flying fortresses and 200 vanguards. The Margrave then asks which forces can be mobilized immediately. The man replies 200 vanguards and 1 flying fortress. The old man says that's sufficient, while thinking that the brat they're learning about actually dared to challenge him. He declares, "Then it's war," vowing to make him regret it. Back to our boy, he thinks that they must have seen the video that was just released and are now preparing for an attack. The connection between Anna, Cedric, and Raven Margrave is unbreakable. His blade of vengeance will only be complete when it reaches Rengrave. However, before that, certain conditions must be met to solidify his position, specifically facing 3 individuals. A blonde woman then introduces herself as the daughter of Cain River Daz, Olivia River Daz. Our boy thinks Duchess Olivia River Daz, a mage of the Kingdom of Lewis and daughter of the famous Duke Cain River Daz. Although she's said to be close to reaching the 8th circle, her presence is comparable to the patriarch of the River Dasimony, to which 6 archmages belong. When she says it seems real to her and the others agree it's definitely true, our boy asks whether this means they've recognized him. However, she points out that this kind of magical plaque can easily be forged in the first place. As the 3 of them confront him, he realizes they are pressuring him by resonating their magical circles together, but he manages to break that pressure and asks what it all means. The girl responds that it's amazing. The 2 others applaud him, but she says it's nothing much, they just wanted to test his abilities. One of the girls says she definitely could have verified it without resorting to such methods. However, having 7 circles doesn't mean they're all equal. She simply wanted to measure his exact level. Badre then asks, "So, does that mean I have your recognition now?" She responds that she still has many questions, but she has no reason to reject him. Our boy thinks she has a sensible way of thinking. He wonders if he were a villain who brought harm to her family, would she make the Riverdales his enemy? That would be the same as asking for death, and she doubts anyone could bear such consequences. Since his identity has been confirmed, it's all fine. Then our boy says he would like to make a request, which surprises the three of them. The next day, Markgrave asks how much longer it will take to mobilize their troops and orders them to hurry up. Just then, someone behind him asks him to take a look at a video. He asks, "What is it this time?" In the video, Olivia announces that officially, the young master Adrian Lawrence, disciple of the former Duke Riverdale, her father, has become a 7th Circle Archmage at the age of 20. This infuriates Markgrave. She says Adrian is a rare magical genius, a talent expected to reach the 8th circle, and the Riverdale family will do their best to help him and will spare no effort in supporting his growth. Anna's father realizes Adrian was one step ahead, as if he were reading his mind. She continues, saying that if anyone tries to harm Adrian, the Riverdale family will consider it an act of hostility against them. Markgrave immediately shatters the video, extremely angry, and says that they will still proceed with the plan, shocking everyone around him. He asks if they didn't hear him, they will proceed as planned. When someone asks about the royal family, he says he doesn't care. As long as they achieve their goal, they can overcome anything. Karin, standing behind him, warns him that Riverdale is backing Adrian Lawrence and that they should cancel the expedition, but the old man, still furious, says he doesn't care. They're foreigners anyway, which shocks the three. He adds that he's sure Adrian will feel relieved they won't be able to attack him, which will make the surprise attack even more effective. They must complete preparations and mobilize the troops as soon as possible. To his surprise, Adrian's eagle is silently watching them, relaying everything to Adrian. It flashes back a few moments earlier, with Olivia asking if he really wants to hold a press conference and whether that's what he's requesting. Adrian confirms, and she says she now understands the situation he's in. If he wants, she can offer him more support as a fellow disciple. But Adre replies no, she only needs to reveal that he is a disciple of the former Duke Riverdale and a 7th Circle Archmage. He doesn't need anything more, which leaves her slightly doubtful. Smiling, our boy tells Archia that it's time to go. He thinks that, when it comes to his vengeance, he doesn't want to depend on anyone. He wonders, isn't revenge something one pursues for personal satisfaction? Everything must go according to his plan, under his leadership. We return again to that moment, with her asking why and Adrian answering, "They are my prey, and I don't want to share the joy of hunting them with anyone else." In the dungeons, they manage to break free and begin to flee. In Anna's hand is a key. As they run for their lives, she says that living like this is the same as being dead, and her father will never leave them alone. Cedric asks if they're really going to do this, but she replies, "What else can we do? We can't live like this." Cedric agrees, and she tells him to shut up and keep running. Now on the roof, she looks at the sky and clicks the key. A message appears and she is transported to the airborne fortress. Upon arrival, they remove their cloaks and she says that the peasant is truly something, but she'll make sure he dies. If he really thinks she's going to stand by, he's wrong. With that flying fortress, she can destroy both him and the viscount. With her key, she activates the fortress. The system asks who she is and she responds, "Anna Lawrence, her identity is verified." When asked if she is trying to activate the fortress under threat, she says no. The activation is then completed. Anna orders the main cannon Firestorm to be prepared, aimed at Viscount Lawrence and fired on her command. But to her surprise, our boy tells her to shut up, saying she acted exactly as he predicted. He thanks her for unlocking the fortress's security. She wonders when he got inside, but to her shock, Archia has already defeated everyone and is holding Cedric. Our hero says that trying to shoot the Viscount with a flying fortress only adds to her list of crimes, and the Marquis Raven's troops are almost here. She and her brother will have to protect this land with their own bodies. This stuns her. Our boy says, "That's what I wanted to see. If you're guilty, then you should be nervous. Do you really think your crime should make you so proud?" He then throws her to the ground and says the fortress had many layers of security, but she kindly unlocked them all for him. Anna tells Adrian she's not sure what he's trying to do, but suggests they calm down and talk, as emotions are running high. But our hero isn't someone who tried to blow up a viscount just to talk. Then Archia starts beating Cedric. Our hero simply tells her to bring him over and she throws him beside his mother. Cedric asks why Adrian is doing this, since they're brothers. But our hero says that even brothers had a great shield above them. Arshia then asks what they should do with the knights, who begin begging for forgiveness. Our hero suspects they're from Marquis Raven. He plans to send them back, but to their surprise, he simply opens the door and throws them out of the ship. He tells Arkia he forgot to upload the video and asks her to edit and upload it for him. Meanwhile, the other two are banging on the barrier, begging to be released. With that, our boy says he will use media platforms politically. He posts the video of Anna aiming the fortress's main cannon at Viscount Lawrence's house. Upon seeing the video, Mark asks if he can just kill all the commoners making those stupid comments. Mardo says it's possible, but not easy. The site is under the jurisdiction of the Union of Elia, which doesn't release users' personal information unless it's a serious crime. The Marquess says those damned Elia people are truly stubborn. One of the men behind him says a flying fortress is fully operational with 200 vanguards and everyone is ready. The Marquess orders them not to fail and to depart now. The mages activate teleportation magic. As the ship vanishes, the Marquess watches and wonders if he should have gone in person. Meanwhile, his daughter, still inside the barrier, screams for her father not to come. Suddenly, above the airborne fortress, the Marques's army appears in the sky. Our boy says, they've arrived. Inside the fortress, the mono wave begins, shocking the two inside. They start screaming Adrian's name, apologizing, promising never to do anything again. But our hero says what he's doing now is something he learned in war. It's called a suicide bomb. With the Marques's army right above the flying fortress, the two scream in terror. Our boy raises his glass and waves goodbye to Madame Anna and Cedric, who watches from the sky as the fortress explodes with both of them inside. As he laughs, he thinks, some may say revenge is meaningless, but he strongly disagrees. He asks Arcade if she wants to make a wish. She replies, "What do you mean?" He explains that they should make wishes while watching fireworks. He thinks alcohol has never tasted so good. It's the era of magic. August 15, 2019. He has erased Anna and Cedric and caused great disruption in this world. But now he has achieved his absolute freedom, simply watching those fortresses and ships explode beautifully. Back in Marquess Margrave's office, he asks why the hell there's no communication. The operation should have ended by now. He wonders if the communication system failed. Still anxious, he then asks about the spies they sent. One of the men replies that they've lost contact with all of them. Marco Lev asks, "Are they playing with me?" One of the other men suggests that perhaps this entire situation was planned in advance. This infuriates the Marquess even more. He wonders how long this has been happening. If it's true, it means he's been in the palm of that boy's hand all along, a boy young enough to be his grandson. But then, to everyone's surprise, someone enters the room calling out to His Grace and says he was searching for online articles related to the Lawrence territory. This article was